It is worrisome that 1 in every 3 women, based on research, is exposed to domestic violence. And the question is, we've had so much talk about it. However, it doesn't seem to be on the decrease. Welcome to the program Viewpoint. I'm Ifunanya Amathili, and today we'll be talking about domestic violence in our communities and what the community can do, or what role the community can play to ensure it comes to its barest minimum. With me in the studio, 2 social critics, Ikenna Anyaboso, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having
me. And Uzodimma Enzo Inzeribe, thank you too for being with us. People will wonder why I'm talking about domestic violence with men when I should have women as my guests. But I wanted to balance it out because, one, it's the men who are the perpetrators and then the women who are most times the victims. So it will give us a fair sense of hearing or balancing if we can say, let's talk to the men. Let's know what the problem is. So let's start with you, Ikenna. What do you think is the problem? Why is this not reducing? 3 in 1 is a huge number.
Yeah, it is. And I think domestic violence has been talked about so much, and it's about time we start doing something about it.
I agree with you.
We talk about it most times referring to women as the victims and men as perpetrators, like you said. Mm-hmm. But I also want to believe that men sometimes can be victims of domestic violence.
Okay.
Because you talk about domestic violence in several forms. It can come as a physical abuse, a sexual abuse, emotional abuse, or a mental abuse. Mm-hmm. But in the physical aspect of it, women are often the victim. And there are so many instances or many issues that can give rise to this. But whatever the reason, it is condemnable. It shouldn't happen. And as much as we talk about it, I think it's about time that people actually started making efforts at stopping domestic violence. And women are encouraged, whatever circumstances they find themselves in, to report any case of domestic violence to the appropriate authorities, so that the law can take its course against such a perpetrator.
So let me talk to you. I would like to, I don't know if it's the right word to use, you're a feminist in a way, because I'm
not a feminist.
Well, the why I say that is because you're always clamoring for women's rights, women's, things that concern women, trying to make women have a better idea of their self-worth. And I think that's one of the reasons why I use that term, a feminist, not in the negative light that most people do. Why do you think that, and I found out that domestic violence has nothing to do with your class, your age, your educational background, how intelligent or how educated you're not. Why do you think that women still go through issues like this?
One, I've said it time without number, women still go through issues like this because most of them go into marriage as jobless women. They don't have any source of income and their lives solely depend on the man. There's so much burden on the men, and most of them have been programmed and raised from birth to believe that life is incomplete without a man. So they tend to do everything humanly possible to attach Mrs. to their name. And a lot of them that are experiencing domestic violence, they can't speak up. Because if they speak up, the society will not defend them. Let me start with the cultural institutions. The traditional institutions will not defend them. The religious institutions will not defend them. If they run into churches for the church to defend them, the church will always advise them to endure. Pray for your husband. He's going to change. You rush to the traditional institutions. The traditional institutions will always blame the woman. They'll start asking you, what did you do to the man for him to beat you? There's always a reason to always blame the woman who's experiencing domestic violence. And it has made the women, they don't want to complain. They don't want to speak up. I've always advised them, if you're experiencing domestic violence, you must speak up. We need to start setting records by arresting some men. If the women don't speak up, you don't want to speak up, you have to rush to the appropriate authority. Report your husband. We have every right to report your husband to the police. If you don't want to go to the police, go to any sincere human rights activist. But you have to make sure, have that man arrested.
So you think that's what would help if people, made reported cases and then brought it to
Not
the
just,
front line?
it doesn't end at just reporting the cases. You have to make sure your husband should be arrested. He should be arrested. No man has the right to lay his hand on a woman. If the woman is tormenting you, she's disturbing you, or what you do, just ignore the woman and move on. You shouldn't lay your hands on a woman. For me, it's a crime against humanity.
Ikena, let me add to this question, because you talked about traditional institutions, and I feel sometimes that it's these institutions that are part of the problem. Why do I say this? When we go for, meetings where you have to report maybe to the Umunna and the rest of them, there are women gathered in those meetings, and then the women will always make the victim look like he had said, "You are at fault, you must have said something, you must have done something." When we run into the churches, let's use the Catholic Church, for example. We know that the Catholic Church does not support or condone or tolerate divorce. And there are a lot of people going through abusive marriages. I'm not talking of divorce based on trivial issues, but where it felt like, okay, it's matter of life and death. And the church would say, no, you must stay there because, God expects you to be in one union. So when women can find solace in the church, where women can find solace in the traditional institution, aren't these institutions the very ones that should be where she can go and find help or peace?
Yes, you're very right. These institutions exist so that they can help in addressing some of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they're not succeeding in doing that very much.
Okay.
But I'll beg to differ in some of the points you made.
Please go ahead.
The church, traditional institutions are there, and somehow they agree in many aspects of the union between a man and a woman.
Absolutely.
They respect the sanctity of marriage.
Absolutely.
Which is the reason why it is difficult for the church sometimes to advise that you take divorce as an option. All right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not. I don't think in extreme cases, the church would say, stay there and die there. All right?
Okay.
But the respect for the sanctity of marriage gives the option, or gives the room to exhaust every option at settling whatever disagreement that exists between a man and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, the traditional institutions are actually there, all right, to help in situations like this. But we mentioned stigma. And this is a particular area where we really need to work on. People need to speak out, don't need to die in silence. There are channels of communication existing in the traditional
Why do you
institution.
think women are still stigmatized about speaking out?
Well, I think it is a societal thing. Okay, but now look at it. Think about yourself as a victim of domestic violence. Mm-hmm. Why don't you want to speak out? Is it because you're going to lose your husband? He's going to send you away from the marriage? Or is he going to beat you more? I don't understand. Why don't you make use of the channels of communication available to you?
Some women won't speak out because they feel maybe if they come back, the husband is going to beat them
Beat
more.
them more?
Yes.
Okay, for instance, where the kindred is involved, or the Umwada, for instance, is involved, or the Indian is involved, and they give the man certain conditions. Do you think that that man will violate such conditions? I have seen circumstances, situations, where the Umwada actually got a man who is beating his wife and flogged the man.
Okay.
As a penalty.
So we can use those institutions to actually
the
get
women should
redress.
actually be encouraged to speak out more.
Okay.
Nobody will know what you're going through until you say it.
Okay.
Sorry, what if you said if the woman that flogged the man? I'm 100% sure the man is a poor man.
Hello. Hello.
Well, this is a good
Yeah.
point.
If it's a rich man and him there,
It's a rich man with a woman.
not to flog the wife.
Well, that's a very good point. So is it possible
No matter
that it can apply to all cadre in the society,
It will.
irrespective of...
In the pure traditional setting, nobody, if you understand how powerful your mother is, nobody is above them. They are the only ones that can call a man to order, whoever you are.
Okay. So
In
why
the
do you
pure
think people
traditional
don't
sense.
explore these options? I mean, if we know that what you're saying is almost like an age-old tradition.
Yes.
And we agree. The last research was done by Clean Foundation, and it showed that domestic violence is actually, it was in 2001, it was about 30-something%. In 2016, it was as high as 50-something%. So the statistics shows that in every 3 women who are in some kind of intimate kind of relationship, 2 are victims. But let's say 1 is a horrible victim, you understand? 1 is definitely going through physical abuse. The other ones could go through other kinds of abuse, maybe emotional abuse and stuff like that. If we have strong institutions like what you're saying, like the UMA does, and this is increasing, why haven't they been effective in curbing it in our communities?
I think it still boils down to the communication.
Okay.
All right. While Uzo was speaking earlier, he mentioned the fact that you shouldn't remain in a situation just because you want to be a missus.
Okay.
All right. So if you look at yourself as being a victim of domestic violence, the onus is on you to speak up.
So until they speak up.
Until you speak up, nobody can actually know what you're going through.
Uzo, let's come to you. I know before we had this program, I did some research. And sometimes people find couples in an incident where the man is, beating the woman with him, the wife, a girlfriend, and you have passerbys, onlookers, and they just stand and they do nothing. So if the victim themselves, and I'm taking that from what you've said, that if the victims themselves can't speak out, what about those that look and observe? When domestic violence happens in people's houses, you have neighbors who hear the scream, whether it's the man screaming, but now our focus and emphasis is on women because they're the majority. Why don't people do anything? Why don't people speak out?
I'll tell you why most of them don't do it. They tend to do nothing because in most cases, take for instance, the man is beating his wife. You rush into the house or you try to separate both of them. And along the line, you eventually stop the man from beating the wife. And the next day, the man continues to rush into the house to separate both of them. And you advise the wife. In most cases, some men try to advise the woman to leave the man. And after set and done, the woman still go back to the wife, to the husband. And you see them the next day smiling, chatting, dancing. How will you feel? Will you go back the next day to separate both of them? You rather keep quiet, because if you go in there to separate both of them, they might just use you to settle their differences.
So that's
So
why
most people tend to walk away from it. Whenever a woman and a husband are having issues, they tend to keep away from them. Let them settle their differences. Because if you walk in there, for me personally, if I walk in there, if I find a man beating the wife, if I walk in there, I'll tell the wife to divorce the man.
You know what? Let's hold you on that thought. We'll go for a short break now, and then once we come back, we'll have more conversations about domestic violence and then what communities can do about it. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. We've been talking about domestic violence in Nigeria and what we as a community can do to bring it to its barest minimum. And we were talking with you, Uzo, before we went for the break. Do we think divorce is the only way out of this? Because like you said, if you go there and you say, why isn't the woman staying there? And I know in our part of the society, Nigeria, coming down to the southeast, coming down to our Igbo heritage and culture, marriage has a lot of, it's revered, it's important, it's significant to us. And our culture too has a funny way of looking at women who, walk out of their marriages, maybe as part of self-preservation. What else can a woman do? We've talked about using the traditional institutions, and then, which you said, where you mentioned the umadas, and then you said, no, your own advice is, you know what, the fire is too hot in the kitchen, get out. But what else can women do, especially those who are afraid of making that, final severity with the relationship?
I think it still boils down to speaking up. But again, on a more broader angle, we need to actually begin to look at our traditional system
Okay.
and the values. It's unfortunate and sad, but in this era, you still find is some culture where if a woman has not been beaten by her husband, she feels that the husband doesn't truly love her.
Oh, women too feel like that.
Yes, there are some women.
You're not into. Okay, so sometimes the women too actually want that.
Some see that as a sign of the man
love.
loves me.
Oh wow.
If
Okay.
my husband has not beaten me, then
That's interesting.
he doesn't really love me. So we really need to start creating awareness, and start changing the narrative. Start looking at our traditional and cultural values again to sieve out the wrong things that are in them. And of course, begin to teach women what their rights are in a home. All right, some people have actually misinterpreted this to some extreme levels.
Yeah, that women are supposed to be, subservient. The man is the head of the family,
Yeah.
so the woman is underneath.
Yeah, submissiveness is part of the family setting, all right? In the Igbo culture, religiously, or whatever. I believe in that, okay? Submissiveness doesn't mean that you have to be a servant to a man. It all talks about being humble and accepting that the man is the head of the home,
Okay.
all right? But then you don't take it to extremes. I mean, for the man, to say, okay, this woman is under me, so I have to subject her to whatever, all right? And the woman doesn't have to see herself as a servant or as a doormat that the man has to march over any time. Okay, so we begin to educate our women, and as Ozo said earlier, every woman needs to have some sense of independence. Have a job, have something you are doing. Don't depend on the man for every little thing that you need. Okay, either you get a job or you start a business.
So are we saying that
be a traditional housewife?
Economic also plays
It's
a
not
role?
an excuse.
Because you're
It shouldn't
saying
be
that
an
if a
excuse.
woman doesn't have a job, or rather a woman should have a job, does that mean that for women who don't have jobs, because I know I've been for like 1 or 2 seminars where they've had battery, and like I said in the program, it has nothing to do with your status. I've seen professionals, doctors, architects, engineers, highbrow women who you wouldn't even believe that their husbands beat. So if we're saying that a woman must be empowered, which is very good in its own, but is that one of the reasons why there's still battery, or could promote it?
It does, in the sense that, for me, you shouldn't give men this platform to see you like a slave, to treat you like a slave. Before I proceed, marriage is not slavery. Marriage is partnership. I advise women, if you want to go into marriage, have something doing, no matter how little that thing you're doing is. Try and contribute your own quota to the family so that the man won't treat you like a second-class citizen. An average Nigerian man in quote tend to treat women like second-class citizens, and you shouldn't give them that room. And that room is when you walk into a marriage empty-handed. The man is responsible for everything about you.
But it's our
your
culture
family.
that women believe
culture
that
is not,
men,
culture is not static.
the men take care of the family.
No.
That's what it is.
It's outdated. That culture is outdated. We need to abolish that kind of mentality. It doesn't make sense. Culture is not cast in stones. Culture evolves. Ought to have evolved past that stage. We're in the era of gender equality. Like I always say, nobody's the head, nobody's the tail. If my opinion supersedes yours, I'm the head of the house at that particular point in time. If my woman's opinion supersedes mine, she's the head of the house at that particular point in time. Marriage is not slave-master relationship. No. The woman should have her own right in that home. The man will not just sit down and acting like one form of emperor, and he dictates everything. His opinion supersedes that of the wife. The wife doesn't have a say. That's no longer marriage. That is slavery.
Okay, you know what? We know that these are things that happen now. The next thing, which is the focus of this discussion, is what next? What do we do? How can the community, and the community involves the churches, the umuadas, our workplaces, how can the community help to reduce this? Does it have to do with our mental orientation? Does it have to do, because I know that people break laws where it's acceptable. Outside the country, in more civilized countries, there are penalties to be paid, and then you find out that it's actually a lot less than it is in our climb of the wall. So
Yes.
on the last note, moving forward, what do we do? How do we move forward?
There's a lot to be done.
Okay.
First, by visiting our laws again, the laws of the country and the state. Fortunately, we are reviewing our laws, the Anambra state laws, and I believe very soon it will be done. I believe we'll have these things in the laws. But the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria needs to be looked at again.
Okay.
For instance, in the north, this kind of thing is prevalent.
Absolutely.
And the law, the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, unfortunately, does not apply in certain instances in the core north. What applies there is the Sharia
He's
law.
a Sharia lawyer.
So there are a lot of things to look at. The law, the religion, our traditional values, the culture, what would teach the children. All right? Like what he said, every time make emphasis on the man being the head of the family. That is what the children hear all the time. So where is the place of the woman in the family?
So the young men grow up also believing that,
they are the-
notion
yeah,
and the head and the
head
lord
and
of
the
the,
head. So
lord
we
of the
need
manor.
to revisit those things and start teaching them in a more balanced form. When you're talking about the man being the head of the family, also talk about the woman and her position in the family.
Okay. Okay, so do you want to add to that?
Well, in conclusion, truth be told, parents, please, I plead with you. I'm going to lay emphasis on women because they're the ones experiencing domestic violence in this part of the world. Just raise your daughters to be strong, courageous, and independent. If they're jobless, they're not ready to pick up their own bills. Please don't advise them to go into marriage. Let them remain single until they get something doing.
What's your message?
First, men also suffer abuse, and but women suffer it more. And I want to talk to the women and say, speak out more. All right? You don't have to die in silence. If you're suffering abuse in your home, speak out. There are humanitarian organizations out there. In Anambra State here, we have the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs. Go there and make your report. In extreme cases, go to the police.
For me, until the society learns to stop the stigmatization against victims of domestic violence, so many women will continue to suffer in silence. As for the men, always make sure you have your ignore button. No matter what your wife tells you, your girlfriend tells you, always press your ignore button. Never you lay your hands on a human being. Not to talk of a woman.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being a part of the program. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of today's topic. It's been interesting. But the summary is domestic violence is something that's very real in the society. It's affecting our wives, our mothers, our children, our daughters. And the onus is on us to train our sons the way we want them to treat women when they grow up. The same way we want them to treat our daughters, their sisters, when they grow up. And also, we say to women, we have institutions who can protect you. Like our guest says, don't remain in silence. There can be help if you seek for it. Don't forget to go to our social media handles, which are scrolled down at the bottom of the screen. Send us a message, and then we could talk about something you'd like to talk about next week. Thanks for being with us. Goodbye.